Hello there, we are your hosts Vivek and Pabitra from the Agile Coach podcast. In this podcast, we bring fresh perspectives to you through our interviews with thought leaders in Agile coaching, facilitation, business analysis, and product management roles. Enjoy. Andre, thanks for coming back. Another episode with the Agile Coach. In this episode, we want to talk about your work that you did, your transition story into product ownership and product management. So let's start with, you went to school for pharmacy, or you were in pharmacy for a little bit, and you're going to go become a doctor. And then suddenly you're a product owner, senior product owner, and you're leading a product management team at Mastercard. So tell us about your transition story.
Yeah, so absolutely correct. Went to pharmacy school and worked in pharmacy for a while. And, it wasn't really for me. I don't know. I just wasn't happy. Like I was doing the job for like 5 years and I just, it's the same thing over and over. And it wasn't playing to my strengths either. So what I found out was I was actually pretty decent at the business side of things, right? And then I always found tech interesting. So I ended up going to business school and got my MBA. And then from there, I was looking at, different opportunities. So a family friend of mine was an engineering director at Pfizer. So he was like, hey, take a look at Python and, try to do some work there. And so I started coming up with ideas, and one was a contract authentication app. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's try to build this. And so I actually pitched it to, a colleague of mine who basically wanted to give me about 10 million for 10%. And so, that was kind of like the first advent of, oh, this is, product management. And so I was like, that was cool. Now that fell through. So I'm definitely not rich by any stretch. But that was, kind of the initial vein. And so then I started working with, doing some SMB consulting and working with you guys. And, started doing some product owner work. And I had some of that, initial experience of building some of those products. And, after working with you guys for a little while, then I transitioned into another consulting gig and then did some product management work, doing some B2C consulting, or not consulting, B2C product management. And, continued growing, and, now I'm a director.
Andre, second question for you is, what do you like about tech, working in tech?
Yeah. So I think I've told you guys this before, but tech is my second love. First one is my kiddo, but the second one is tech, definitely. So I think what I like about working with tech is that, it's the next frontier, in my opinion. So I'm a huge Theodore Roosevelt fan. I believe in like speak softly, carry a big stick. And I think that, as humans, we need some frontier to challenge us and for us to grow, right? And so Elon Musk will argue it's space. I'll argue that it's digital, right? So with tech, you can be as creative as you want to be. You can build whatever you want, and you can turn it into a career, right? You can always learn. You can always grow.
Yeah, that's cool. I was kind of curious. Obviously, there are like product owner, product manager, just going on product roles it's one of the hottest career out there right now. But I mean, I don't want to say that not everybody cannot be a product owner, but like, what are some backgrounds that you've seen? It's not that you can go to school to get a product management or product owner degree, but like there are certain background or professional background that somebody currently has that would suit them better, or that would help them have a lot of these transferable skills for going into, product roles. What are some of those roles you would say that can have that easier transition? If you are looking for a career transition, like what are some professional careers that can easily make that transition to product?
Yeah. So I think a lot of business domains are great areas to start in, right? Because with business, you're looking at how do you help a company grow? How do you help a company succeed, right? So some of that, inert product thinking comes from a business perspective. So when you look at a lot of the tech, top tech companies, a lot of product managers they hire have an MBA for good reason,
Yeah.
right? Now, you don't have to join a top tech company. You can join any company and be a product manager. So if you have like a business background or a sales background where you actually can think about profit and what the customer need is, really easy to transition. And then also, if you have any specific domain experience, so let's say if you're going to work for Pfizer, right? And you're looking to build out some technology for their drug reps. So if you were, let's say, going to pharmacy school, like my background, you could easily transition into health tech or pharmaceutical technology or something along those lines. So domain experience is an easy way to get into the product field.
Andre, what do you think? You've actually introduced a good friend of yours who was in sales,
Mhm.
and a handful of folks have gone through and become like a product owner. What do you think about somebody coming from tech sales, and their potential to break into product ownership?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I sometimes I even see product managers going from product management into being like a solution architect and working like to help shepherd that sales process, right? So I think sales is a great way to break into product management because you do have that people communication skills. You think about success, you think about revenue, and then you're also getting customer feedback, right? So you are working with product every now and then by providing input of what the customer wants. And second, with product management and product ownership, you care a lot about go-to-market strategy. And so when you're thinking about go-to-market strategy, you have three real main components. You have sales, you have marketing, and then you have customer success. So if you're coming from a sales background, you essentially have all three of those, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think sales is a great way to kind of transition to product management.
Yeah. What might be some motivation for somebody in SDR or account executive role? Just kind of giving them, like an idea of what it might be look like, taking that skill set and going to product. What might
Yeah.
be some upsides to that?
Yeah. And I think it depends on your personality, right? Some people love the hustle. And the people that do and don't mind, instability, which I don't want to say sales is not stable,
Mm,
but it's definitely, in my opinion, less stable than, product management. If you want the
yeah.
stability, if you want to raise a family, product management is a great way to, transition to something new that's very lucrative, right?
Yeah.
And then with an SDR and account executive, I'm not saying product management isn't stressful, but it's a different kind of stressful, right? Um, at the end of the day, like results matter, but you work with a team. When you're working in sales, a lot of times you do feel a little siloed off. You feel like you're
Mm,
on your own little island, right?
yeah.
With product management, you have an engineering team that works with you to make sure that that product comes to fruition. So not everything's on you. And I recommend you never work in a silo if you're in product management.
Andre, kind of curious, and I'm sure, some of the product owners who are kind of listening to this are curious since we are talking to a product manager, because that's probably the career transition or trajectory they kind of want to go on. Because you've grown from a product owner to a product manager pretty quickly. What are some things that you did and some tips that you would have for somebody who's been hanging around as a product owner for a couple of years, but haven't been able to make that stretch to go become a product manager?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was a product owner, I was thinking more in terms of my specific team and then delivering on requirements, right? So it was a little more delivery focused. It was a little more siloed, right? Now, I started thinking about how can we optimize this and what are some areas for growth. So with product management, I started thinking about what the competitive landscape looks like and started thinking about what's it ultimately going to take for this product to be successful and not necessarily just deliver this product by this date, right? And I started thinking more in terms of like a business owner, right? So started thinking about who are our competitors, what other functionality could benefit this product, and then when would it even make sense for the user to get this in their hands, right? So I started integrating a lot more of that business side into how I would think and into my daily activities and daily process.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess was there any specific book or anything that you would
Yeah.
recommend for people to kind of get that thinking, or is it something that people kind of grow into?
Mhm. Yeah. So, with business school, I learned a lot about like SWOT analysis, gap analysis, market analysis,
Mm,
but I'm a fangirl for Marty Kagan. Right. So, I heard about the book Inspired, and I was like, okay,
That's a good
cool.
book.
Let's read this.
Yeah.
Freaking phenomenal book, right? And so I read through Inspired, read Empowered, and just started reading a ton of books. But as you guys already know, I love reading. So I try to knock out a book every like 2 weeks or so. But Inspired was really like my first like real insight into product management, because I did some product management, but I really didn't understand like what does it really mean, right?
Yeah, no, and I've kind of seen you just, I think it's that initiative, right? Like if you are just hanging out as a product owner and you kind of want to continue doing that, I mean, there's a lot to grow into being a product owner as well. But anytime like you want to have a career advancement or kind of want to grow into that leader role, I mean, it just kind of doesn't just fall in your hand. I mean, you do have to take a lot of initiative from your side and really kind of stretch and have that growth mindset around like, hey, can I find some mentors who are product managers that I can learn from? Can I watch some podcasts, listen to some podcasts? So, I mean, it is, and I've seen you do that. It is that, that drive in a sense to like, okay, how do I keep getting better at doing some of these things to be a product manager or just any career advancement? And I've kind of seen you do that. So I know you're kind of being humble in there, but you've worked pretty hard for that.
Well, I think you're right. But with anything, you have to really enjoy it to grow into it. I don't think you can just kind of fall upwards. You might like once or twice, but with product management, if you don't really care about it, it's kind of hard to do, because you are the one who gets blamed for a lot, right? Even when it's not your fault, like you're the person standing in between, the directors and the VPs and, the engineering team, right? The initiative, I think, is huge.
Yeah. What else, Andre? I'm always giving you as an example of somebody who who came to the field so curious and moved on and did so well. So kind of talk to us about your mindset, like how did you do it? Why did you do it? What was the mindset? Anything you can share?
Yeah. So first of all, I found tech incredibly interesting, but I also felt like I had this imposter syndrome because I didn't get like, the bachelor's of computer science, right? Now I'm working through like the MS in computer science at Purdue, shameless plug. But I always felt like I didn't know anything, even though, by how much I was reading, I knew quite a bit. And so it was me trying to prove myself in a field that I really genuinely cared about. And at the same time, I'm a parent and I have a family. So, I had to grow and I had to be good at this. Didn't want to live in that starving artist phase, right? So
yeah. So what is your motivation? Tell us about your motivation. I'm really curious. Like what motivated you to do so much work?
Yeah, because you've taken so many courses. I mean, you haven't given yourself excuses like, oh, product managers don't require to be super technical. You haven't like said that to yourself. You're like, okay, it doesn't require, but I want to learn this, and this. And you went and got your SPC, and like now you're saying, I didn't even know you were doing MS in computer science, and all, like you've learned the technical aspect of it too. And there has to be that motivation for sure to do all of this.
Yeah, I don't know. So like and it's funny because when I was in the medical field, everyone thought like I didn't care about anything because I was like going through a doctorate program and like wasn't studying at all. And a lot of people assumed I was lazy, but I just wasn't interested in it. With tech, I genuinely think it's fascinating, right? So like I was on a call with a couple of people. We were working on developing like a startup. And so I'm like, hey, let me teach you guys Java. So like I basically gave them a crash course in Java. And I was like, all right, so this is, what a class is. This is what an object is. This is what a method is, right? And I had them in like VS Studio Code going to town. But I don't know. I think the motivation is like, if I genuinely care about something, like I have to be the best at it, right? If I don't, like, yeah, good luck convincing me to do anything. But tech, I don't know. I like it. Something just clicked.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you're
No,
not in pharmacy.
Yeah.
yeah. Don't be giving out those wrong drugs. Just kidding.
No.
Uh,
What I'm
um,
curious, Andre,
yeah.
or actually probably after you.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're all kind of making it seem like, oh yeah, easy to get into this and like you've grown into this. But there are
Yeah.
challenges, right? Like I'm
Oh, yeah.
curious, like what were some of the challenges that you faced earlier in your transition and maybe even today that as a product manager that you do face, but maybe like start from like when you broke into, product owner and just like product space, like what were some of the challenges that you faced? Because it wasn't just like rainbows and cloud and.
Oh, yeah, no. So, from the outside looking in, product management looks like such a cakewalk. It's not, right?
Yeah.
There's like a whole political landscape you have to navigate. And so like with products coming in, like I knew, some of the business stuff from, the MBA and, from previous roles I had in previous experience. And, I was pretty good with people. So like when it came to talking to people, I'm like, okay, I got this in the bag. Now, what I didn't realize is like you have an engineering team who's like, oh yeah, that's a ton of work. It's not, right? And so like you have to decipher it and figure out like what's actually true and what isn't, right? So you have to earn trust,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so like, something I did when I was a little more experienced was, I was a product manager for a team and I had like a software engineering director who was using story points as a metric. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So I basically took the Fibonacci scale and modified it by 10. And I'm like, all right, guys, so here's how we're going to roll. A 1 is a 10, a 2 is a 20, a 3 is a 30, a 5 is a 50, so on and so forth, right? And so they just jacked up their numbers. And initially he's like, well, this is going to ruin everything. I'm like, well, no, it's not, because their estimates, 1, and 2, you should just be looking at the slope, the peaks, the plateaus, like what the charts like shape and direction actually looks like. That's all that really matters, right? The actual like numbers, not so much, right? So, that political landscape, and then also dealing with people who have differing opinions. So, I've been in roles where, I'm a product manager and people are like, oh yeah, no, this is what the priority is. I'm like, well, no, it's not. Like I understand you may be, above me in seniority, but that's not really your job. You haven't evaluated all of the, considerations that we need to push this product to the market. So that's not a priority, but this is, right? So trimming some of the fat and actually delivering a lean product is a lot more difficult than people think.
Yeah. And so how do you, how do you how do you go about setting that expectation though? Like, I'm sure, there's a lot of people skills required to do that. I mean, if somebody's like in a higher role than you, obviously you're not saying that flat out to their face, but like, if somebody was struggling, I mean, maybe you are, I don't know, maybe you are, but like, how do you set that expectation?
Yeah.
Or how did you?
So, I've done it in every way you can think of it being done. So I have in the past, like said to someone, yeah, that's not going to happen. And here's why. They didn't like that, but they also weren't my direct manager, right? So I wasn't their direct report. So it didn't really impact me. Now,
Right.
what I've also done is, with the stakeholder, I've done like a game of prioritization where I'll have like essentially OneNote pulled up and, meetings being recorded. They're giving me the priorities. I'm like, I know something isn't a priority. I know it's like the most useless thing they just gave me. And I just threw it in the must have column. And I threw the most important thing in the won't have column. And they looked at me like I was an idiot. And I'm like waiting for them. Like, go ahead and prioritize this for me. And so they did. They're like, well, no, that actually goes into, the W. The other one goes into the M, and I let them prioritize it for me. So I've done it that way in the past.
Okay.
And then I've also done it in like a more strategic way because I knew that I couldn't get around this. So I've also handled it where I just kind of played into what they wanted, right? So I gave them one thing and then I gave them, I had them do a favor for me where I took some work out or like I would reduce the capacity of the team because I knew they were either burning out or whatever, right? So I've tried it every way possible. And you have to know your audience,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think building that trust, right? Like building that trust, building that relationship with some of the folks that you're working with it's definitely crucial in there. So that way, when you're saying, okay, well, let's try to understand why that might not be a priority, maybe being curious on why they think that might be a priority. Because even as a business analyst, like when I've worked as a business analyst, there's been multiple conflicting priorities from multiple different stakeholders. And it's like, well, like, what is actually the priority? And to each of the stakeholders, whatever they want, that is the priority for them. But, asking certain questions, I'm sure, and building that relationship with them, or maybe even getting everybody together like you did to make sure they're all in same place and they can have that conversation with each other on what is the number one, because there's like, you can't have two number ones, you can only have one number one, right? And so letting them also kind of decide on what that number one is, I'm sure.
And I mean,
the way to go.
and you have to consider like where your funding is coming from too. Like sometimes, especially in big organizations.
Yeah.
So
Andrej, going back to your story of going and becoming product owner for the first time, what do you think was easier than that, what you thought? Like, you had this big thing, okay, I'm going to go become a product owner. And, people make up different things, right? I'm pretty sure you made up easy. What was easier than what you thought?
That's a hard one. So I dealt with massive imposter syndrome coming in. Now what I'd say was easier was basically flat out telling the team like, hey, this is my first time really doing this, so like help me out. And they were like, yeah, bro, no problem. Right. And so getting the team on your side, getting them to trust you, I think being vulnerable was the key. And then the tech, right? So like, because I just thought it was cool and was trying to figure out like, how does this actually work, like the prioritization became really easy. Because I was just like, okay, so this can't happen because of this. So this has to go in first, and this has to fly out because it's critical for like, potential risk or any like compliance related issues, right? So prioritization wasn't, nearly as bad as people make it out to be. You just have to decide, okay, no, yes, maybe later, right? So I'd say those were like the easier functions.
Yeah. And what was harder than you had estimated?
The politics. Right. So political buy-in, right? Like
a leadership buy-in also, when you say that's kind of what you mean.
Like,
also.
Because like, let's say they, with a product, you ultimately want to make sure that you're doing what you can to solve customer problems. So like making sure you bring that customer centristic approach and like bring the empathy to the table. It's critical, right? But if a stakeholder who's signing your paychecks ultimately wants this to, make it to the market, you can give them your go. You can provide like some type of like business case or presentation. And that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, like sometimes you just have to suck it up and deal with it. And I think that was like the hardest thing for me, especially going from like SMB size to, massive Fortune 50 organizations. That was kind of like where it got hard.
Yeah. So. No, thank you. Last question for you, Andrej, is what is the advice you have for a product owner trying to break in? Any advice you have for them?
Yeah. So if you're a product owner right now and you want to be a product manager, get to know your domain, right? So if you don't want to learn tech, you don't have to, right? That's not, what we're after. What we want to know is, do you understand what happens if certain parts of the, landscape shift within your industry? Like, let's say if you're working for Nike, what happens if Adidas launches a product, right? Are you aware of what the repercussions could be? So if you work in, let's say, healthcare, sign up for like a ton of healthcare, newsletters and magazines, and start to understand what's actually coming down the pipeline. So understand who your competitors are, understand, how companies function, and also understand how your customers operate, right? So know the demographics that you're after. That's my best advice.
Sounds great. Andrej, thank you again for this amazing, insightful conversation. With that,
Thanks,
say
Andrej.
bye.
Cool. See you guys.
All right, that's a wrap with this episode. Thank you for listening till the end. We hope these podcasts are providing value on your Agile journey. If you haven't visited our website, theagilecoach.com, we highly suggest you for other courses and supporting material on your journey. You can also get access to our self-paced courses or learn more about the live training that we provide to become a Scrum Master, Product Owner, Product Manager. With that, we will see you on the next episode. Love and best wishes from the Agile Coach.